My name is Aisha. I am from New York City, and my parents are from Panama and Costa Rica. I'm Black Latina. It's really funny because I became hyper aware of it once I got to high school, because I went to a really, really diverse high school, and the question of where you come from becomes like, a topic of conversation, and people were always surprised that I was from a quote unquote Spanish place, and they were like, "Are you black?" And I'm like, and that made me think. The question itself sounds ridiculous, but I began to think about what it means to be black, why people didn't consider me black because I was Spanish, and then I don't know, in high school, like I said, that's when I became hyper aware, because then people begin to develop their own beliefs or perceptions about groups of people. So all my friends are West Indian, like every single last one of them. And they would make like disparaging comments about, oh, that's why Spanish people this. And I'm like, am I supposed to feel some type of way? Like, am I included in that? But I also grew up with Spanish people saying, black people are this way. And, I've always felt like I'm kind of playing the middle. People tend to put me in whatever side they're not talking about. So if they're talking about Spanish people, they're like, Aisha, you're black. I'm like, I don't know how to feel. And I don't know how to feel about it. As I'm older, I'm like, that's annoying. That's stupid. How would you like if people said this? The question, are you black, is the quintessential, you don't understand race and ethnicity. I am black. My ethnicity is, Panamanian and Costa Rican. And it's funny because now that I've gotten older, I also won't say that I'm African American, because I feel like it kind of signifies something that I'm not. Yes, I have African roots way back when, but I feel like when I think of African American, I think of like Southern blacks. So the connotation for me means something different. But I think as a society, we're still trying to figure that all out, and so people just keep getting it wrong. And I think the concept of Black Latina is still something our society's like, those are two different categories. That question on all the census and whatever, it's like, are you Latino? And then they put like non-white, and you're like, wait, what's happening here? I still hesitate answering these questions. Nobody wants to be part of the uncool group, right? And, to be black means it comes with a set of stigmas. It comes with, being black isn't easy, and it's kind of cool and it's trendy, but it comes with a lot of rough and bad things. And to be part of that race, why choose that one when you can choose something else, right? So to be Spanish, maybe that's a step above for some people. Similarly, I know people who have chosen I'm black and, not the Spanish part. I have family members who are like, I'm Panamanian, but I don't speak Spanish. I don't do anything Panamanian. I'm black. So I really do think that comes down to a question of like upbringing. And for me, my parents, it was one and the same. And maybe it was because my parents were my mother's darker than I am, and my father is around my complexion. And for them, like, the two are so mixed. There's no separating the two. It's actually pretty funny because my dad grew up in a household where he spoke Spanish all the time. So he is very Panamanian. Like, he is Panamanian to the core. My mother grew up in a household where her grandparents are West Indian or Jamaican. And they had came to Costa Rica to build the canal. They came to Panama to build the canal and stayed in Costa Rica. So my mother sees more of the separation between black and Spanish because she grew up in a household where her grandparents would say, stop speaking Spanish in the house. That's what like pañas do. And so she sees that separation a lot more, but she too melds the cultures. Like, I remember telling one of my friends, I didn't realize that everybody didn't eat like yellow rice and oxtail. Like, for me, like, I've always had those two cultures, the West Indian culture and the Spanish culture, very, very much intertwined. So I've never felt the need to separate it, or have I ever separated it, Growing up, especially in Brooklyn, to be Latina meant being Puerto Rican or being Dominican. And Puerto Rican, Dominican had some, from a lot of kids, very distinct features, or they looked a certain way. So when they met someone who didn't look that way, that confused them. A lot of people surprisingly have no idea where Costa Rica is on a map. I would often get, what's a Costa Rica? Panama, because there are a lot of Panamanians in New York City, people knew of it, but they still maybe had never met a Panamanian in their life. Or a very common experience I have is if I speak Spanish before introducing myself or have to speak Spanish somewhere, people automatically, I'm assuming I'm Panamanian. And I'm like, how did you know? Was it my accent? No, because you're dark skinned. So a dark skinned Latina has to be Panamanian. So I think it boils down to like the schemas that people have. And when people were surprised, it's because I didn't fall into these neat little schemas of who I was supposed to be. It was funny because when I went to Spain, and this probably goes back to your first question, that's probably where I experienced racism. Because people were confused by the fact that I arrived there in an American group, and I was very American, very confused by European culture and, you know, some of the habits. But my Spanish was a little better than like my friend from Iowa, who had a very like southern accent. So they would automatically ask me, oh, you know, why do you speak that way? Where are you from? And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm from, you know, my dad's Panamanian, my mother's Costa Rican. So they'd be like, okay, you're black, you're Hispanic, and you're American. Like, for them, that didn't jive at all. They could not understand that. And even when I would go to the quote-unquote black parts of Spain, I would get the same reaction. You know, if you were my complexion, you were African. Point blank, period. You know, there is no, you know, people don't have that concept of like, this is a color line and we're all these colors. They didn't see that. And I think it is a lot of our schemas that kind of led to that surprise of what a Spanish person is supposed to look like. I don't think we can blame the media wholly for the perception of what is Spanish. And I think, you know, it's so ingrained in a culture, across cultures, the straighter nose, the, you know, fine hair, the lighter hair, all of those things have been perceived as the prettier things. And throughout the years, that was, you know, there was a reason there were no black models on covers of magazines for a very long time, because that wasn't beautiful. So I think you take a societal perception and then it starts to seep into the media, and then the media keeps it going. So although we have a society that's increasingly being blended, that's not necessarily being reflected into the media. So a Spanish woman looks a certain way. She is curvaceous. She has long, full hair. You know, she is very, you know, I don't want to say promiscuous, but she's a sex pot. You know, even when she's not trying to be sexy, she's sexy. And you know, I was looking at, I hate watching Telemundo and all those channels, but when you look at those anchors represent that. Even in their so-called suits, because those can barely be called suits that they're wearing, they are sexy. Their accents, the way they roll their R's, it's all extra. And I think that's the image of the Spanish woman that people want. It's sexy, it's fun. And so, you know,
what about how they look?
People want that version of Spanish. It's safe. It combines the sexy sex pot, you know, vivacious, promiscuous, flaunting her body with the image of beauty that we want, right? The blonde hair, the blue eyed. If you could get them both in one thing, that's like, you got it. It's the same thing with, you know, some of this new thing about like the exotic girl being the pretty girl. That's the newest thing. And it's because she has all the features that are desired. She has straight, long, flowing hair, but she's still curvy and voluptuous. And so I think, you know, the media is perpetuating that. When I think about being a black Latina, I guess I don't think about it because it's me, right? And I don't have to think about something that in depth that feels so second nature to me. But I think all the issues around it they're all undermined by the issue of colorism. And the same problems we have in our black community and, you know, the Asian community and the Latino community, I think that common thread is there. And I think we're still trying to figure it out. And the problem is that we're just becoming more and more mixed and diverse. So people are constantly trying to put names on it. They're constantly trying to identify who's what. And as we continue to mix, it gets harder and harder. And therein lies the confusion. So me, an American from New York City, born to black Hispanic parents, Costa Rican, Panamanian parents, I don't neatly fit into any of the categories. Maybe 50 years ago, people fit more neatly. But because we're not falling as neatly into those categories, people... And you know what? Before, when they didn't fit in those categories, they were all together in one place. So my father, a black Latino man, was in, Panama City, Panama, where there were a million other people that looked like him. But now he's in a place where he doesn't fit into what a Spanish person is supposed to look like. So I think the colorism issue kind of belies what some of the struggles are. And I think we really, really still struggle, no matter where you're from. I think every culture can identify with some type of colorism in their community. When thinking about solutions to the problem, I think honestly the only thing that fixes it is exposure. So no matter what, the kid who grew up in the Midwest, only around blonde, hair, blue-eyed kids, expects every Latina to look like Sofia Vergara. You know what I mean? And until we put some black Latinos on TV that look like me, or, and that might be their only exposure in life, media. So until media decides that I'm what's pretty, or until media decides, right now, like, so Zoe Saldana's hot, right? She's one of the hot actresses. And she's someone who's boldly like, I'm Hispanic, you didn't know? Like, and I represent both sides. She's talked very openly about it. Doing a lot of, and I like to see this when they do a lot of media for Spanish, magazines and stuff like that. Not only because, it's extra cover. I think that's the only way people are going to realize that, we have this concept that people look different. We all come in different shapes and sizes and colors. But we don't really believe that, right? White people look a certain way, and black people are supposed to look a certain way. Spanish people look a certain way. You can tell. That's the idea, until you expose something different. So for some of us, growing up in New York City, that may happen a lot sooner. But if people assume because you're from New York, you've been exposed to a lot of diversity. You grew up in Flatbush around only Caribbeans. You've been exposed to the diversity of Caribbeans. So when you meet a Spanish person who's not a Puerto Rican or own the, bodega, and they look like me, it throws you off. But that person has learned. Right there, they've learned. So I think the only thing that helps is exposure. Media, I just don't think they're going to do their part. They are in it for the money, and right now they're going to go for what sells, and that's the exotic beauty. And, colorism dictates that the exotic beauty does not look like me. So I don't think media is going to step up to the plate. When have they stepped up to the plate? How many black actresses on TV, period? So I don't think we can depend on them.
Yeah.